Welcome to OBG Talk, a new collaboration between K24 Inside Business and Oxford Business Group that asks the country's key decision makers about the opportunities and challenges of investing in Kenya. My name is Robert Tashima, the Africa Managing Editor for Oxford Business Group. For more than 20 years, OBG has conducted on-the-ground, in-country research in the world's most dynamic emerging markets, from countries like Malaysia and Saudi Arabia to Nigeria and Mexico. As East Africa's biggest economy, Kenya naturally fits into this lineup. But how can Kenya realize its potential? What role do private investors play? And what does it all mean for the average citizen? Those are the questions we will be exploring today in OBG Talk. Today's episode will focus on Kenya's tech sector. Nairobi has earned a deserved reputation as Africa's Silicon Savannah, with a rich universe of startups and innovators. From Mpesa to Moth3 Racer to the e-citizen portal, the tech sector has seen rapid growth and, by some measures, generates a similar proportion of economic activity to the tech industries in France and Germany. But what are the factors behind this success, and what are the challenges that remain? To help us understand these questions, we have with us Ken Njoroge, CEO and co-founder of Cellulant, a mobile solutions company. Ken, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Robert.
Now, Ken, you're something of a serial entrepreneur, having been involved in tech startups for about 20 years now. Much of that obviously working with Cellulant on mobile payments. So I wanted to first ask you a little bit about the FinTech sector. Kenya has obviously seen quite a lot of success in terms of mobile money and mobile banking solutions, but we haven't seen that really replicated in other countries on the continent. What are the factors that are responsible for Kenya's success in this area?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think over the last couple of years, Kenya's certainly gotten some spotlight around key successes. And the ecosystem for the last 20 years, the ecosystem has come a long way. But I think over the last couple of years, a lot of the momentum has really been driven by some of the flagship successes like Mpesa. And because this sort of create the visibility and create the pool that is required to catalyze the ecosystem.
Right.
And then shortly thereafter, the iHubs, the NILabs, the sort of hotspots of startups gathering together and creating the sort of bubbly ecosystem of excitement that sort of nurtures the young entrepreneurs to actually start these businesses. So I think there is essentially convergence of all these sort of different things that has created a lot of buzz in the sector.
So what was it that made Mpesa so successful as a tool, as an initiative? Why did it see the uptake that it did when similar mobile money and mobile banking solutions in Nigeria or South Africa didn't see that same level of popularity? What was unique about Kenya in that regard?
Yeah, so I think the Mpesa story is a bit of a perfect storm. And it's a combination of a couple of things that have been talked about variously in different areas. So I think there was some environment factors and some of internal factors to Safaricom, the mobile operator. The environment factors, I think the Kenyan regulatory environment and central bank and the government thinking at the time was hugely supportive of innovation. So in a sense, contrary to what typically central bankers would do, the Central Bank of Kenya at the time allowed innovation to follow and to start and regulation to follow. And so essentially gave Mpesa the breathing room that was required to kind of experiment and get their model right. Second environment factor was the fact that the operator had substantial market share, so they could be able to sort of move the entire market without having to sort of form alliances and collaborate with a lot of people in the market. Internal to the mobile operator, I think they had a leadership at the time that was really first-class execution. And that allowed them to build quite a compelling proposition in the market and also build a very good distribution channel very quickly. And then it was a good product at the right time. And then once that got off the blocks, then a lot of the other things that then were built on top of Mpesa and catalyzed by Mpesa, the banks followed. And as a result of that, the likes of Cellulant sort of rose from from that sort of initial market push to fill these sort of specialized niches.
So adding to the ecosystem.
Adding to the ecosystem, yes.
I see.
Yeah.
So you had mentioned political will as being a really kind of crucial component of the successful rollout of Mpesa. To what extent are you seeing that sort of political will now in other countries? I know Cellulant's working, for example, in Nigeria with the Ministry of Agriculture on a mobile wallet for farmers. What sort of support are you seeing in other countries, and what sort of sectors are you seeing the greatest demand for mobile solutions?
Yeah, so I think the general mood across the continent is one of sort of driving towards technology. And specifically in the area we are in, driving towards digital payments and cashless and cash light, etc. And a lot of this is obviously being driven by sort of governments wanting to have much more efficiency, greater transparency around how they are driving revenue collection, about where they're spending money. For instance, in the case in Nigeria, the government wanted to see a lot of transparency about where there were the hundreds of millions of dollars of subsidy funds going into specific sectors were going. And because governments run these programs, they run these programs in agriculture, they run these programs in education, they run these programs in health, and the transformative opportunities driven by mobile tech will transform specific industries that are very important to government, the water utility, getting power to people. Those things then converge to sort of create these opportunities for a lot of progress to be made in a very short period of time, very cost effectively.
Right.
These are attractive themes to governments.
Okay. So what exactly are the benefits then? I mean, we've heard about some of the advantages there of these mobile solutions, but what are the benefits more broadly of these cashless or cash light solutions? I mean, how does that benefit accrue to the average consumer, the average household?
Yeah. So I would see actually sort of three broad areas I see the benefits for cashless, cash light. So one is just efficiencies. I mean, it's just cheaper to pay digitally. So
right.
If I give a quick example, so for instance, a parent paying school fees in a typical African country would most probably go to their bank, queue at an ATM, or go queue at a bank branch, withdraw cash, and then drive over to the recipient bank, queue,
right.
and deposit the cash, take it to school, and then take it to school.
An entire afternoon.
Right, yeah. So it's just cheaper to basically take payments digitally and to make payments digitally for the consumer. A second benefit is obviously because of that efficiency of payments, and there's lots of repo value adds that happens because something goes digital. Like in Nigeria, we saw that once disbursement of subsidies went digital, the sector became generally productive because then the greater transparency just meant that then efficiency of the money getting to where it ought to get then moved from 10% to 90%, and of course then this sort of increased food production.
Right.
And you will see the same benefits in health, in other sectors, and even in private in sectors, utilities that use digital means to collect payments, etc. And the third area is really because payments are digital, then micro payments become possible. So small value payments become digital, and those completely open up new business models for different market segments. And you see this in solar, for instance, where off-grid solutions are being powered on the back of small $0.50, $1 per day payments, where people then get connected to electricity via sort of prepaid solar models and stuff like that.
So you're really seeing this being rolled out in a wide variety of sectors and with a wide variety of applications.
Absolutely. And what's good about it is actually, so payments in Africa is not a good to have, it's just a must have.
Right.
The incentive to actually move digital is so compelling. So it's a good business to be in.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and certainly that seems to be what's happening here in Kenya with more and more, particularly young people, looking at the mobile sector and the tech sector as a potential opportunity in terms of, not only in terms of jobs, but also in terms of entrepreneurship. Although obviously, when you're a young entrepreneur, whether you're in the tech sector or any other sector of the economy, accessing finance can be quite challenging. Getting that first loan when you have no borrower's record or you don't have the right paperwork can be a real hassle. To what extent are you seeing entrepreneurs dealing with those challenges in terms of access to finance, and what role do early stage funders like venture capital or angel investors play in that?
Yeah, so actually that's it's a big gap, and I think there's a lot of scope for that to develop. Even, credit be given. I mean, the sector has come a long way from 20 years ago when we started, when there was nothing. But the way that I see it is that so there's, sort of slowly emerging a venture capital, angel capital kind of a network. So I see lots of startups and sort of accessing seed capital and small amounts of capital, $50,000, $100,000, etc. What I'm not quite sure is, basically whether the type of money, the patience of the money is essentially a fit for the market and a fit for the stage of development of the ecosystem.
And what do you mean by that?
It's essentially, so the ecosystem is still fairly young. So it means the skill set, they understand, there's good skill set.
Right.
But does the skill set understand what it takes to work in a startup? Do they understand the incentive model? So for instance, that instead of working for a blue chip company, that I can work for a startup and take stock options and these kinds of things. So, so capital needs to be cognizant of the fact that a young ecosystem will have structural issues that they need to address. Right. So I am not quite sure that the angel capital that is there and the sort of early stage money, $1 million, $1.5 million, really understands that stage. And then of course in the intermediate stage, where essentially businesses are looking to raise $4 to $5 million, I think there's been, over the last 2 or so years, there's quite a large set of venture capital funds and private equity funds that are playing in that space. And then of course for slightly more mature businesses that have been there for 7 years, 10 years, like Cellulant, where we're basically looking to access bigger ticket sizes for capital. I'm worried a little bit as to where there's sufficient depth in the market to actually provide that capital in the sector.
I see.
So it's an ecosystem that the funding ecosystem into the sector has come a long way, but it is not nearly there.
Right, and
so to be able to provide the support that is required to sort of move these young businesses up the pyramid.
Right, and so it's, from what it sounds like the challenges are not just in terms of having a sufficient depth of early stage capital that matches the needs of entrepreneurs, but also even later stage capital that can continue to help those businesses grow and achieve economies of scale.
Yeah. I mean, if I was to prescribe, I think the financing market needs more entrepreneurs. So they need to innovate for the environment.
Right.
Yeah.
Are you seeing much of that in Kenya specifically? People beginning to talk about that and think about new models and new ways of funding these middle and late stage operations?
Not quite. I see that there is a lot of noise amongst entrepreneurs about the funding models, the funding structures, the funding terms that are in the market. Later in the month, I think there's a conversation between investors and entrepreneurs and investors. So the discussion is really at early stage. But I think in another year, 2 years, maybe that then might develop into people actually thinking actively about models that work for the market.
I see.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, it sounds like there's actually quite a lot of prospects for growth and for opportunities in Kenya's tech sector then, not just in terms of the creation of content and applications and solutions, but also in terms of financing models and funding models for those operations. So the ecosystem, while it's at a very early stage, it sounds like there's still quite a lot of room for growth and plenty of opportunities down the line for interested investors.
Yeah, I would agree.
Well, excellent. Ken, thank you so much. I'm afraid we've run out of time. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah.
And thank you to the viewers for joining us. And we look forward to chatting with you next time on OBG Talk.